$5,000 for an ordinary lunch. But when he said that, my whole world shattered. I had never turned down a lunch invitation from my father. Not once. Then again, it didn't happen often. Almost never. I remember that day clearly, a Tuesday morning in early March. The New York air was icy, but sunlight still streamed to the narrow window panes of my office. I was in a Zoom meeting when I saw his message. Free for lunch today? There's a place I want to try. To most people, it would have sounded like a casual invite, but from him, a man who scheduled his life down to the second like a walking financial forecast, it was odd. So odd that it made me uneasy for a second. I typed back quickly, "Sure, where?" Within minutes, he replied with a name, Lou Bernardin. I laughed out loud. That was one of the most prestigious French restaurants in Manhattan. A 3 Michelin star spot where you had to book at least a week in advance, which meant he planned this. He, the man who always said, lunch is for refueling, not indulging. I left the office at 11:45. The cold air bit my face, but there was something faint and strange in the breeze, a scent that felt like a beginning, or maybe an ending. I wasn't sure. I grabbed a cab. During the 15-minute ride, I kept checking my phone. Nothing unusual. No weird messages. No missed calls. No sign that today would be anything out of the ordinary. He was already there when I arrived. Gray suit, black tie. The same calm, unreadable expression he wore walking into board meetings. But I noticed something soft in his eyes, as if he were trying not to show something. We were led to a quiet corner table, just the two of us. Window view of the street. A gentle, wordless jazz track played in the background. I sat down and asked, "What's the occasion? You feeling fancy today?" He smiled. "Sometimes. It's worth eating somewhere that makes sitting down feel like a privilege." That was classic him. Part philosophy, part joke, always with intention. We ordered. He went with caviar on blinis, then lobster and saffron butter, paired with French wine. I kept it lighter, roasted sea bass and a green salad. It was a relaxed meal on the surface, but something in the air felt tight. I couldn't tell if it was him or me. We chatted about work, the real estate market, whatever Elon Musk was buying now, a few stocks that were tanking. Then he asked, "Do you remember our first trip together? Just the two of us?" I froze. No one had brought that up in almost 20 years. I nodded slowly. I was 6. You took me to Boston. First time it was just us. No mom. He smirked, not quite a smile. Maybe he was only now remembering too. Breakfast that day, we had burnt pancakes, didn't we? I laughed, and I cried. I begged you to take me home. You tried everything to calm me down. He looked at me for a long time. But by the end of the day, you said, "Can we go again tomorrow?" I went quiet. I didn't know why he brought that up, and he didn't explain. He switched topics, asked how my food was, chatted like normal, but from that moment on, I couldn't stop watching him. His gaze was different, not like during tense meetings, not like when he was angry or making a major decision. It was like he was memorizing me, the way I reacted, the words I used, the way I looked back at him. His gaze was different, not like during tense meetings, not like when he was angry or making a major decision. It was like he was memorizing me, the way I reacted, the words I used, the way I looked back at him. "Are you okay?" I asked, "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded, didn't look at me. Never been better. When someone says never been better with that expression, they're almost always lying. But I didn't push. There was something in his voice that made me not want to know the truth. We ended the meal with a flambé dessert. Blue flames rose from the plate, like a quiet farewell. As we left the restaurant, he placed his hand on my shoulder. It's been a while since I've had a lunch this fun. I still can't quite name the feeling I had when I walked out of that restaurant. It wasn't exactly joy, but it wasn't heavy either. It felt like hearing a wordless melody. So beautiful it hurts, but having no idea why it moves you so deeply. We said goodbye outside. He hailed a cab back to his 42nd floor apartment on the Upper West Side. I remember the sunlight slanting across his shoulder as he turned back to give me a small nod. No hug, no deep words, but there was something final in his eyes. I returned to the office, back to the meetings, the deadlines, the soul-drying emails. But in my head, I couldn't unsee that moment. Him pouring a glass of wine, his hand ever so slightly trembling. I had never seen that before. That night, I called him. He didn't pick up. I left a voicemail. Thanks for the lunch. I really enjoyed it. It meant a lot. He never replied. 3 days later, my mother called. They had stayed in touch, even after their divorce 10 years ago. Her voice was tinged with worry. I haven't heard from your dad in a few days. Do you think he might have gone somewhere? I reassured her. He probably just turned off his phone. He does that sometimes. But that night, I started to worry for real. My message still hadn't been marked as read. Not that he didn't reply. He always read. Immediately. That was his thing. Being hyper-aware, always in control of his inbox. And now, silence, as if his phone had vanished from the world. The next morning, I went to his apartment. I had a spare key just in case. I stepped inside, and I didn't need anyone to tell me. The apartment was spotless, so tidy it looked like no one had lived there for days. Morning light poured over the gray leather sofa, his pride piece, the one he exchanged 3 times until it was just right. I called out to him. No answer. I walked into bedroom. There he was, lying still, eyes closed, hands at his sides, as if sleeping, but his face had gone pale, cold, and eerily quiet, just like him. I called an ambulance, though in my heart, I already knew it was too late. The medical report later said it was a stroke during sleep. Painless, peaceful. I left the hospital feeling so hollow, I didn't know where I was going. I walked home the entire way, as if putting one foot in front of the other might distract me from a feeling of air being stolen from my chest. The funeral was held a week later. Small, he once told me, I live quiet. I want to leave quiet too. There were a few former colleagues, some old friends, a couple of guys from his golf club. Everything was done exactly as he wanted. Simple, tidy, no fluff. I sat in the front row, holding the program I had written myself. The headline read, "A man who only spoke when necessary, but always lived honestly." After the service, I stayed at his apartment for a few days, not because I needed to clean, because I couldn't leave. I was searching for something, a sign, a missing piece. That evening, I opened the desk drawer he always kept locked. No one ever really tried to open it before. Inside was a single envelope, handwritten on the front, "For Alex, open after I'm gone." That evening, I opened the desk drawer he always kept locked. No one ever really tried to open it before. Inside was a single envelope, handwritten on the front, "For Alex, open after I'm gone." Inside was a letter, 3 pages, all in his handwriting, precise, composed, the way he'd written his quarterly reports back in the day. Controlled, but not cold. I read, and with every line, my chest grew heavier. "Son, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Don't be sad. My only fear was that I wouldn't get to say this while I was alive. I wasn't a good father. I know that. I chose work, success, and money, and left you with an empty seat during moments that mattered most. But not a day went by that I didn't think about you. That lunch, I planned it a month in advance, because I knew I didn't have much time left. And I didn't want our last moment to be in a hospital. I wanted to see you one last time, in the light, in laughter, in a meal where we could just be ourselves. When you smiled over that sea base, time slowed down for me. I realized maybe I didn't do everything right, but at least I could give you one unbreakable memory. Don't blame yourself for not noticing. I hid it on purpose because I didn't want you to carry the weight. I just wanted to go quietly and leave you with something worth remembering. Thank you for growing up even without me. Thank you for becoming the man I'm proud of. I love you, even if I said it so little you doubted it. The letter slipped from my hands. I sat still for a long time. All the things I had ever blamed him for suddenly felt so small, so meaningless. I used to think he was distant, cold, but maybe he just didn't know how to love. Maybe this was the only way he knew. A lunch, a glass of wine, a shared memory from long ago, and a quiet exit. I looked around the apartment. Every object now felt like a relic. The abstract painting he once debated over for weeks. The little table where he wrote the letter. The bonsai tree by the window he trimmed like a meditative ritual. They were no longer just things. They were proof of a man who didn't speak love out loud, but made sure it lived on. Months later, I went back to Le Bernardin, sat at the same table, alone, ordered the exact same dishes he did. And as I poured a glass of wine, I looked at the empty seat across from me. Imagine him sitting there, hand resting on the table, eyes calm, silent, watching. No one knew that lunch cost $5,000, but to me it's priceless. Because some goodbyes don't need tears, just one final look, and a truth spoken just in time. I used to think I knew my father. The older I got, the more convinced I became that the distance between us was unchangeable. He was from a different world, a man of discipline, of numbers, of success measured in spreadsheets and timelines. And I had learned to love without expecting to be loved back, to live without needing to hear, "I'm proud of you, son." But somehow, just one meal, one letter, that's all it took to unravel over 30 years of belief. After he died, I didn't cry, at least not the way people do in movies, collapsing, tears flowing like waterfalls. The grief didn't come all at once. It crept in, quietly, like a long-held sigh finally escaping your chest. Some nights, I open his letter again, read it over and over, under the glow of my desk lamp. Each word feels like a voice. I can hear him, deep, steady, slowing down whenever he says something that matters. I always stop at the last paragraph, not because I'm overwhelmed, but because I'm afraid. Afraid one day the letter might stop making me feel anything. I've started remembering the smallest things, the things I once thought were unimportant, like how he used to tap his fingers on the steering wheel at red lights, how he always placed his shoes neatly side by the door, or how he would quietly leave the dinner table before anyone had a chance to say, "Thank you." I remember the way he'd glance at me through the rearview mirror while driving me to school, never saying anything, just watching. Back then, I assumed he was checking if I had all my books. Now I think maybe he was just trying to hold on to the image of me in the most discreet way he knew. After the funeral, I returned to my own apartment, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Everything reminded me of him, even things that had nothing to do with him. A coffee mug, a wristwatch, the sound of fans spinning at night. Somehow it all made the air feel heavier. Once, while washing dishes, I felt tears fall without warning, not from sudden sadness, but from remembering something he once said when I was little. A man who can care for the small things can protect the big ones. I never understood it back then. Now I realize he lived that, quietly, precisely, and with a love so deep it had to hide. Grief doesn't come like a storm. It's more like living in a house where someone once breathed, once walked, once existed. And then one day, they're gone. No one packed up. No one moved in. But something is undeniably missing. I started to change, not in dramatic ways. I didn't quit my job. I didn't move to a new city. I didn't shave my head or start meditating at dawn. I just slowed down, put my phone away when I ate, called my mom more, jotted down notes in my journal again, recorded my friends laughing at dinner. And every night before bed, I say, I love you to my son, without waiting for him to ask, without needing him to be old enough to understand. I stopped chasing perfection in the relationship I had with my father. I've accepted there will always be holes that never get filled. But I've also come to understand this. What he couldn't give me then, he tried to give me in the end, in his own way. And that's enough. That $5,000 lunch wasn't just a meal. It was a bridge between two men who had spent their lives walking parallel, but never quite touching. Now, whenever I pass by that restaurant, I don't think about the price or the dishes. I think about his eyes, and I smile, not because the sadness is gone, but because the sadness has a place now, not as a wound, but as something sacred. People often ask, if you knew it was the last time, what would you do differently? I don't need to answer that, because I was there, and I listened. Perhaps what makes this story unforgettable isn't the price of the meal, but the things money can't measure. Presence, listening, and a quiet, honest kind of love. A father who didn't speak much, who didn't express emotions in obvious ways, chose his own path to give what mattered most, a complete memory, before walking away in silence. And the son, through doubt, distance, and old wounds, finally saw the truth he had always longed for. His father's love had never disappeared. It had simply never been spoken. We don't always get the chance to fully understand our loved ones while they're still with us. Sometimes, the only thing we need to do is to sit, listen, and let an ordinary moment become eternal. Because in the end, memory doesn't hold on to receipts. It holds on to eyes, smiles, and the moments that never come twice. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of the story. If you've ever shared a meaningful moment with a parent or loved one, or if there's something still left unsaid, please feel free to share it in the comments below. I read every message, and I truly value each of your stories. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story, where we continue to explore the quiet, profound moments that give life real meaning. Just one like or one share from you is a huge encouragement and helps me keep spreading these honest, human messages even further. Thank you for staying, for listening, and for feeling this with me. I'll see you in the next video.